All right, what's going on, YouTube? This is BoxingWave. So everyone is still talking about Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, and I get it. We're all excited for the fight. I'm very excited for the fight. I've been wanting this fight for at least the last 4 years, and not even longer because while Errol was a prospect and when he won his first title against Kell Brook, and while Bud Crawford was still at 140, I already wanted the fight back then, right? We were already talking about the fight back then, along with, a Danny Garcia fight with Bud or a Keith Thurman fight or whoever, all right? So anyway, this is a fight in a long time in the making for this fight, and it seems like we can possibly get it next. Hopefully we get it next. Hopefully there's no issues with the negotiations and as regards to the purses and stuff like that. Hopefully there's no fights in between. Hopefully there's no mandatories that get in the way like Stan Jonas and the WBA. Hopefully we could get this fight next because both of them seems to be at their current best at this stage in their careers. They both seem to be they're coming off good wins. They both seem to be really, really good. And we're going to talk all about that. All right. This is going to be a mini breakdown. I'm not going to give you a full breakdown because I want to see if the fight's going to happen. I want to do my film study, but I'm really familiar with the both of these fighters. And I'm just going to do a quick video talking about some of their strengths and weaknesses. Everybody, when it comes to these two, everybody's an expert, not claiming that I am. But what I will say is that I've listened to a lot of championship level boxers talk about this fight, and I've heard both sides, guys that picked Bud, guys that picked Spence, expert trainers, people really involved. Everyone online feel like they're an expert, but you got to understand that there's a lot of credible people that have had different opinions about this fight too. All right. So I do believe though that it's a true 50-50 fight. And I can see how both fighters can win. I'm one of those guys that's similar to Joshua and Wilder, leading up to the fight, even though the fight never happened, but leading up to, and making content about the both of these two fighting each other over the years. There were videos where I thought that Deontay Wilder would take it. And there were years where I thought Joshua would take it. It was usually based on their last fight. And being that Spence just fought Ugas and looked very, very impressive in that fight, a lot of people feel like, Spence is too strong, too big, too strong, too powerful. The output is too high. And, a lot of people are leaning towards Spence. And then when they see Bud fight, a lot of people see, once he stopped Sean Porter or, the towel was thrown in, whatever way y'all want to call it, people were going to think that Bud is going to win the fight based on his last performances. You know what I'm saying? And that's super normal. All right. So let's get into it. Two things. Let's start off with age. Bud, I believe, is 35 years old. All right. He's 35 years old and Spence is 32. All right. So clearly Spence have the youth advantage. Okay. A lot of people have been saying over the years, I've heard over years, people said that they're waiting to age Crawford out. And if that was part of the plan, listen, there's nothing you can really do about that because Spence is on the PBC side cleaning up over there, which is what he did. He picked up all the straps that's over there. The two straps that was there, he beat Kell Brook first. And you got to give him credit for going to the UK and beating Kell Brook. I still believe that was his best win because of the way he did it, how it was done. You might say that Sean was the better opponent at the time, but because Kell Brook was coming off of a stoppage loss and coming back down in weight. But I think the fashion that Spence did it was impressive because he went out to the UK and beat him, stopped him, and he was actually losing the fight early to me, and he was able to turn it around and stop Kell Brook. So I think that was a very impressive performance. All right, so he did what he had to do, beat Sean, beat Ugas, all right, who beat Manny Pacquiao, and now he's title holder, unified champion in the division. So the age thing, yes, Spence has the age advantage. Crawford hasn't shown his age like really like that is really kicking in my opinion. He's just coming off his best win in his career, and he looked impressive. It was very competitive, but no one ever beat Sean easy. People that say that Sean was past it and he was washed up, he was already damaged. People was going to say what they want to say. It was a good win. It was an impressive win. It was a fight that everybody wanted. It was a fight that people felt that Crawford was trying to avoid. And once he won, people tried to take the credit of him winning away. Keith Thurman had a debatable fight with him. So does Errol Spence, very debatable fight, split decision. Even with the knockdown, was still a split decision. You know what I'm saying? And Crawford had a close fight with him. It was very close up until Crawford stopped him. All right. So anyway, age could be a factor, especially because Spence is a pressure fighter. All right. He's probably going to outthrow Crawford unless Crawford can find a way to neutralize him and slow him down, which, I thought Ugas was part of Ugas's plan. He didn't really execute that plan, if that was the plan. But I think the age thing could be a factor in this fight, definitely, because Crawford is older, mid-30s. So that could be a factor. We also got to remember that Crawford is one of the better athletes in the sport. He can literally do a whole lot in there in the ring. So even though he's 35 years old, you gotta understand when you're an amazing athlete, and you can move the way that he can move and stuff, it takes a little longer for you to age. You could say that about like a Manny Pacquiao, for example. Great athlete. Look at how he looked at 40 years old. Because when you're so fast and you move so well, your timing and everything is down. It's so sharp and you're on point. You can probably fight until you're 40 years old. Look at Floyd. Look at Manny. Look at like some of the other great athletes. Even like a 50-something-year-old Roy Jones when he was fighting Mike Tyson, and both of them. Guys at 50 years old can still move the way that they do. They might not be elite level, but they can still move very well. And I think that could be a factor, with Bud, if he continues to fight, for another 3 or 4 years. I don't know how long he's going to go, but age is a factor, and age is an advantage for Errol Spence. All right. So when we talk about styles, they're both southpaws, right? But Bud is a switcher. Right, so we don't know what he's a guy that is just overall, he's way more versatile than Errol Spence. It is what it is. Errol can do a lot in there, but Bud could do everything in there. All right. So Bud usually when he's very dominant is usually him fighting as a southpaw. I think when Crawford is very serious, he fights as a southpaw. There were plenty of fights where he started out as a right, fighting on the orthodox stance, and then he switched over to a southpaw, and that's when he really started to take over. So what does that mean exactly? Well, Spence and Crawford don't really have many fights with elite level southpaws. Neither one of them do. All right. When I think of Spence, he fought Chris Van Heerden, who was a southpaw, who is kind of like a journeyman, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? He never really, no one knew who he was when he fought Spence, but I guess at that time he was a step up. He was one of the better opponents on Spence's record, and I think Heerden was undefeated at the time, right? And then you have Leonard Bundu, who fought Keith Thurman, was a switcher, a constant switcher. I mean, his style is just weird because he just switches right, left, right, left, right, left. and doesn't really like get into a rhythm in either stance. He just continues to switch throughout the fight. So I wouldn't really call him a southpaw, but he's a guy that can fight as a southpaw that Spence fought. And then you got Emmanuel Larte from back in the day, which is still probably one of the more entertaining fights of Errol, or like competitive fights in Errol's early career. And one of the few fights that Errol actually got hurt. All right. If you've never seen the fight, check it out. Errol did get rocked with a shot in a later round, like close to the end of the round, and was wobbly walking back to his corner. No big deal. It was a long time ago. It's like 10 years ago now. It happened with Canelo early in his career against Cotto, all right? Jose Cotto, not Miguel Cotto. So it happens, guys. You're going to find footage of a guy getting rocked early in his career. It's not a big deal. But yeah, Spence on the elite level hasn't fought any southpaws, not on the super elite level. He had some fights back then, but all of these guys, Danny Kell and Porter and, the people that he beat that were good, Algieri, all of these guys, none of them were southpaws, all right? And the same thing with Bud, Now, Bud, I would say it's a little better. His resume is probably a little better at fighting southpaws because they were a little bit more recent and they were like a little bit more, they were just better level fighters. You got Ndongo, who was undefeated at the time. I know he's taken a lot of losses since then and he's pretty much washed up. But Ndongo was an undefeated champion at the time, and that was a fight for undisputed at 140, right? You had Felix Diaz, who was also a pretty good fighter. At the time that Bud fought him, a lot of us feel like Felix Diaz beat Lamont Peterson. I know this was the later stage of Lamont Peterson. He had just moved up to welterweight, but that wasn't long after the Danny Garcia fight where Lamont did look good. But Felix Diaz, he was pretty good boxer. I think he was a gold medalist in Dominican Republic, right? I don't know if it was gold, but I know he was a good fighter. He was a good fighter, all right? And you had Felix Diaz, you had Julius Ndongo. I'm trying to think of who else. I think there is a third person there, maybe a little earlier than those two. All right, but as a welterweight, in the past few years, Crawford hasn't fought any southpaws, okay? And regardless, both of them are on a different level as far as the fighters that they both face that were southpaws. Overall, like, Crawford hasn't fought anyone like Errol Spence. And Errol Spence hasn't fought anyone like Terence Crawford. Let's be real. So I know a lot of you are gonna go into resumes and who did Bud fight, and as welterweights he didn't fight no one and all of that stuff. And I was like, well, he's not a career welterweight, but Crawford's 100% as far as his KO ratio as a welterweight, and I think what I will say is, even though a lot of people like to say that he's smaller, you gotta understand that he's had more than enough fights to prepare him for a Spence fight, and he's adjusted to the weight well. He's knocked out everyone he's fought, and he's a physically strong fighter, and I think people forget that. I know he's not the biggest fighter, but he's physically strong. There's a lot of guys with power, but there's a lot of guys that are strong. This is a guy that I see deadlifting over 450 pounds. There's videos out him deadlifting heavy weight for his size. Guy that's 147 can deadlift over 450. There's a lot of 200-pounders out there that can't do that. So you gotta understand that's pretty impressive. Very strong guy, and he has wrestling background. You know what I'm saying? So you can't just base everything off the size. Yes, size is a factor, but size wasn't a factor when he fought all those welterweights he beat. Jeff Horn, much bigger guy, a guy that's been fighting at middleweight, since leaving welterweight. And Crawford was able to stop him, all right, and beat him easily, where, Manny Pacquiao struggled against Jeff Horn, all right. And this is before Manny Pacquiao beat Keith Thurman, and he struggled against Jeff Horn. All right. So a lot of people bring up the size. Yes, Spence is naturally the bigger man, and that is definitely a strength of him because he's big, he's durable, and he's able to, he's a career welterweight. He's fought nothing but bigger guys his whole career. You know what I'm saying? He's sparred with guys that are bigger. So has Crawford. I'm sure Crawford has sparred, but he has guys like Jamel Charlo in his camp who he's sparred with over the years, you know what I'm saying? Punchers. So Errol's never been down, he's been rocked a few times in his career, but he's the bigger guy, all right? But Terence Bud Crawford, you got to remember, again, he's adjusted to the weight, and he stopped every bigger guy that he's fought. Everybody he's fought was bigger since he moved up. When he was at 135 and fighting guys like Gamboa, people used to say he was too big. He was bigger than Hank Lundy. He was bigger than Gamboa. But as soon as he got the welterweight, he's knocked out every welterweight he's fought, and people are still saying he's too small. You know what I'm saying? Sean Porter, who's a very strong fighter, you can see Bud just tying up with him and lifting him up and turning him like he was nothing. You know what I'm saying? He's a very, very strong fighter. All right. So that's another thing. Now, going back to the stances, I'm curious to see how Crawford is going to deal with Spence. I don't think you want to go to war with Spence with jabs when it comes to jabs. Spence jab is a weapon. Bud has a very good jab, but he uses it as a tool. He probes it a lot. You know what I'm saying? He uses it as a distraction. He uses it as a way to set other shots up. He uses it as he can land them, and it's quick and it's sharp. But Spence uses it as a weapon. He causes damage with the jab. He can hurt fighters. He is a different level of a jab. You know what I'm saying? Now, being that Crawford, I feel like Crawford is more dominant as a southpaw. If you're gonna fight as a southpaw, now Spence has an opening straight to your head. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to if he fights as an orthodox, at least Spence will have to deal with punching over your jab, or countering your jab more because both lead hands is going to be on the same side. So the thing is with Crawford, what happens with him? Does he start out as a right, as orthodox? Does he start out as a southpaw and switches? The good thing is that he's capable of doing all the adjusting. The bad thing is you still got to deal with Spence's jab, which is he throws it all day long. It doesn't matter if you counter him. You've seen it in the Ugas fight. It's early on in the Ugas fight, at least. Ugas is going to counter the jab. Guys are going to counter the jab, but Spence is not going to stop throwing. He doesn't care. You're going to counter it. You could do whatever you want to do. Spence is going to keep throwing it. He's not going to stop until he get the results. He's taking the punches to give some back. He's willing to take the punches to give some back, to get in range. And I said he loves to commit to the body. Now, Crawford himself, again, very good jab. I'm not saying that he doesn't have a good jab. He does. He just uses it differently. It's not the weapon that Spence uses it for, though. But also, when it comes to the body, Crawford is a very good body puncher, okay? He likes to sneak them in there. He's dropped guys like Julius Ndongo with a body shot. He is a very good body puncher, okay? But, again, like I said in the Ugas fight, in the breakdown of that, there's levels. Ugas attacks the body when you're close to him, all right? It's like more like a defense mechanism. Like, I want you out my space. I want to create distance. If you get in here, I'm going to go to your body. But he also leaves himself open when he does it. Spence is a guy that commits to the body. All right. The ultimate goal of Spence is to bully you, turn into a dogfight. If he's boxing with you early, he's doing it in a way to eventually get inside and outwork you. We've seen it in the Kell Brook fight, and we've seen it also in the Ugas fight. All right. Same game plan. And those was his two best performances in his career, in my opinion, because they were like completely identical. Same game plan. And I think that's when Spence is at his best. It's very competitive when it's on the outside and you are, you're countering Spence and you're using range and distance and you're using your jab and you're moving and, is good. But once a fight turns into a dog fight and Spence is on the inside, all he's doing is committing to the body, and even if he gets hit up top, a lot of these fighters get stuck trying to protect their body. And that's when Spence starts taking the advantage because you're unable to throw back. Everybody, not everybody, but there's a lot of people that are saying, like I made a video the other day about Ugas and people that think the fight is rigged. And I'm like, no, the pressure takes your offense away because now you're spending more time trying to protect yourself, and if you're not a high volume fighter, which Ugas isn't and never was, now you're stuck trying to protect yourself instead of trying to outthrow Errol Spence or match his punch output. So he's able to take fighters' skills away. Terence does it in a different way. See, what Terence does is Terence can counter. That's how he slows you down from the counters. Not only is he out working a lot of fighters, but he counters, and he's a superior counterer than a guy like Ugas, who is an excellent counter puncher, but very stationary. Ugas has very slow feet. He's very flat-footed. All he does is take half steps forward, half steps back, but he doesn't really move. Right? The only time we seen him move in this fight is when he was in trouble. Crawford moves all fight long, okay? And he also has great endurance. Now, I know Spence throws more punches. I know he could go 12 rounds just going crazy, throwing nothing but power punches all fight long. But Crawford has great endurance as well. And he can fight a 12-round fight at a high level as well. But Crawford is going to counter, and he's not stationary. So he might counter you with a shot that you don't see coming because not only because of the angle, but it's because Crawford stepped around you and now he's making you pay. Watch Jeff Horn fight. Jeff Horn is a guy that brings pressure. He was rushing in. Spence does it a lot better when he comes in because he's using his jab to step in and he's keeping that guard up. Whereas Jeff tries to rush in sometimes like with his head, and he's like a wrestler. He's just rushing straight in. Bud was able to step around him, whether he was stepping to his left or stepping to his right. He would step around him, turn him, pop, counter him with shots that he didn't see coming, right? Because it was always on his blind side. That is something that Spence has to be concerned about. That's something that Spence never really dealt with before, because these guys that he's fought, good counterers. Kell Brook did a good job early in their fight, getting the timing down, getting some good counters. But Crawford is on a different level than Kell Brook, then a different level from Ugas, who's very stationary. He can throw the same type of shots and still put power in while on the move, while on his toes as well. It's kind of crazy what Bud can do. And that's what people say he's special, because he can do things. He has a counter for every punch. He has great angles, but he has a counter for any punch that you can throw. And we know what Spence throws. He's very, he's all about the fundamentals. He's using the jab. He's using the straight left. He'll throw an uppercut in there. He digs on the inside. He doesn't have a long range of game. He's not as versatile as Terence Crawford. So if you watch Spence, you know what he's going to do. It's just that the fighters that Spence fought was unable to stop him because he's so strong and he's so powerful and he's so durable. You know, you hit him, he's still coming. You back him up, he's still coming. The few times that Ugas caught him with a big looping overhand right, which was his signature punch, Spence got rocked a couple times, fell back for a second, and just kept coming forward. It didn't stop him from coming forward. You know what I'm saying? Can Bud do it? Can Bud do it? Now, I think the reason why I think Bud is more capable of hurting Spence over the other fighters that Spence has faced over the years is because Bud can hit you with shots you just don't see coming. And those are the shots that hurt more. I don't know if Bud has more power, than all of these guys. He might. But if at the very least he has the same level of power than these guys that Spence has fought, at least on the same level, right? But he hits you with shots you don't see coming. You know what I'm saying? And, if he's stepping around you and countering you, that can either hurt you or at least slow you down or be a little bit more cautious about this coming in recklessly. Again, Spence is not as reckless as like a Jeff Horn was. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the key things and strengths of Bud Crawford, being so versatile, being able to switch, adjust, and be able to counter without being stationary, being able to move and use the ring well, all right? Using that lead hand to probe and cause distractions, using it as head movement and knowing how to push off and get away from a fighter that is in your space. You got to understand, when Spence is in your space and he's going to the body, what do these other fighters do? Stand still. They stood still because they just didn't have the legs. Now, Kell Brook had the legs, but Kell Brook, even before that fight, even before the Triple G fight, Kell Brook had fights where the endurance wasn't so good early on. Later on in the fight. So not only did Spence, he beat him because he outworked him. And Kell Brook, at some point in that fight, he became a stationary target. You know what I'm saying? And was getting hit all over on the inside, protecting his body, and then started getting smashed up in the face. All right. So another major point. Oh damn! I just lost it. Give me a second. This is a big factor. This is one of the biggest strengths of Errol Spence. Probably the biggest strength out of everything. Spence starts out straight out the gate with the pressure. Bud doesn't. Bud is a slow starter. He needs a couple rounds to figure out what you got and, strategize while in the fight. Okay. Bud has never been a quick starter. All right. I've seen him, first round or two, give rounds up to guys like Hank Lundy, Tomas Delorme. I seen him struggle early against Jose Benavidez. You know what I'm saying? There's fighters out there that are not on Spence's level that Bud, needed a little time to figure it out. If Spence start off quick, which he will, out the gate with pressure, if Bud can never get to a point where he's getting comfortable, it can be over. And that is the biggest key. If Spence is to win this fight, a lot of it is going to be based on how the fight starts. Okay? Because Spence, we already know what he's coming with, the game plan. We already know what the game plan is. All right? It's going to be all about the pressure. Crawford needs time to think. If you don't give him the time to think, all right, and you keep that pressure going, and Crawford is to feel that power and that pressure, and he's not really able to set things up right and figure things out, it could be a rough night for him. Can't ignore that. As much, I'm a Bud guy. I'm rolling with Bud, but I gotta be realistic as well. Bud has always started slow. All right. And I think that is the biggest weakness even over people talk about size and age and resume, No, I think if we really thinking about it, if we're really gonna be honest, Bud is a slow starter. All right. He needs a little time to figure you out. Now, not a lot of time because Spence, we know what he's coming with. But that pressure might be too much. It could be too much for anybody. You watch that Ugas fight, you watch the Brook fight, you watch any fight of Errol Spence, this guy is relentless. He's not stopping, and he's more fit than he's ever been on an elite level. He's not blowing up anymore in weight, and he looked fantastic against Ugas. All right? Now, part of that reasoning why he looked the way he does against these other fighters nonstop is because he's not getting hit back with anything that's going to make him slow down. He doesn't respect. I said this was going to be a short video. He hasn't fought anyone that made him chill out. He hasn't. And maybe Bud can do that. But Bud is going to have to wake up real early, and I mean like after round one, because you don't want Spence to create momentum. Spence gets stronger as the fight goes. Bud gets smarter as the fight goes. Okay? What we saw in that final round with Bud and what Bud and Porter, where Bud's corner told him like, "Yo, you're down." What? I'm down? All right. We need that Bud in round one. There's not going to be a much of a time where we have to just be figuring things out and playing games and toying around. This is one of those fights where you got to be your very best at the very beginning. He may not feel that way. I know a lot of the fans may not feel that way. I know I feel that way. I think it's too risky to toy around with Errol Spence, especially with the exchanges, because sometimes Bud likes to beat fighters at their own fight, in their own game. He did that with Kavaliauskas. Kavaliauskas was undefeated, heavy puncher, real big puncher. And Bud got caught with a good shot trying to square up and trade with the heavier puncher, the bigger guy. And he paid the price. Now, after he got knocked down, he woke up and started dominating Kavaliauskas, pounding him. That's what he does. But Bud needs to be smart from the gate. Stop trying to beat. You can't go into a Spence fight trying to beat him at his own game. You don't want to exchange with him. And I'm bringing up all the points. Not only do I read out there, but I've seen it in the ring. Bud can't go in there cocky like, "Yo, I'm going to just beat you up at your own game." Yeah, with certain fighters, you might be able to do that, but not against Spence. Spence is the one you got to be smart with from the gate. You got to come out at your best. And that's what makes this fight so good, because I think it's going to really bring the best out of the both of them. I think there's levels with both, and I think as they step up, they do more. They show more of what they're capable of doing. You know what I'm saying? And I think this fight here is going to really show what they both can do at their very best. There's fights where you're like, that fight was all right. Like the Benavidez fight, it's just not a good showing for Bud, in my opinion. It's not one of those fights that I go back to and be like, "Yo, Bud is the best. You never seen him before? Watch this fight." That's not the fight to watch, because Benavidez was tricky. He's a really good counterpuncher. He was catching Bud, and it was kind of a slow fight. Now, there was a point where Bud said, "All right, I'm going to get the stoppage. I'm going to get this guy out of here." That's the thing with Bud. He's weird like that. He likes to carry fights a little bit and try to beat you at your own game. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to win and dominate, and he's not always that way. You know what I'm saying? He likes to prove to the people that say certain things like fighter's too big, or his side is too strong, or his punch output is this, he's a better counter, or, he's more powerful. I think he likes to show what, he wants to disprove the naysayers. In the Spence fight, he needs to take a different approach, in my opinion. Because Spence comes in with the same game plan every fight, no matter who you are. He's not trying to just beat you at your own game. He said he was against Sean Porter. I think some of that might be true, and some of it might be not true because of the way Porter was putting the pressure on him and forcing him to fight on his back foot, which is something that I think needs to happen if Crawford is to fight Spence. If Crawford can find a way to force Spence to back up, the fight would be completely in his favor, But yeah, there's certain fights that I just don't feel like, even with Spence, I think the Danny fight wasn't a bad fight. It was a good fight, but that's not the fight that I like to go to, and that's the fight he was coming right off the accident, I mean, a lot of his fights were, I can't say he had any bad fights. It's just, a lot of them were more competitive than others, But anyway, so look. I just wanted to do a video where I brought up, this is a long video, and I didn't mean this to happen, but, once you get going, when you're talking about all these fights, you get going, and now I've been sitting here for almost 40 minutes talking about this fight, saying I wasn't going to do a full breakdown. This is my current breakdown, and I've always leaned toward Bud because I just wouldn't bet against Bud because he can do so much. There's so many things he can do. He can adjust in so many different ways. I think he's just more technically sound. He could switch. He's proven to have power at the division. He's physically strong. He moves better. He knows how to use the ring. He's so smart. And I've always leaned towards Bud for this fight. But I have my doubts. I think it's 50-50. I think Spence has a real chance of winning. And I can see why. Because of the pressure, because of the power, and because Bud tends to either start slow or gets reckless and tries to beat fighters at their own game. And sometimes when it's like something needs to happen for him to wake up, and I don't think he can afford to do that in this fight. So I do believe it's a real 50-50. I did a poll the other day. This is the first poll that I've ever done on my channel where it was completely 50-50. I think more people had Spence winning a decision, and then a few more people had Bud winning by KO. And I think the last time I checked, it was like 1,500,000 votes. And it was completely even, and you had like 4%. It was like 48%, and then 4% had a draw. All right. I think both can win by knockout. All right, or stoppage, and I think both are capable of winning a decision. I can see Spence, if it goes to a decision, I can see Spence winning a decision just based on output. Aggression, output. Volume and pressure. Ring, people could see it as a ring general, whatever way. And I could see Crawford winning with the more cleaner shots, the more concise shots, accuracy, counters. And I could see him catching Spence with a shot he doesn't see that can hurt him. I can see Spence hurting Bud just based off the pressure and the volume, or a body shot or something like that. I think the fight can go either way. It's a true 50-50. My pick will be Bud. I don't think that's changing unless there's something that happens in between now and the fight that would make me change my views. But I'm still leaning towards Bud winning this fight. I don't know by knockout. I don't know if, I'm not confident. But I got Bud. But I think Spence has a real shot. And anyone that tells you you're a fool for thinking whatever way you feel, don't listen to them. Because again, like I said, the experts, I've heard great assessments of this fight from real experts, not just guys that say they box online. I'm talking about the real experts out there. I've heard great points on both ends. All right. So anyway, I'm getting out of here, man, because I wasn't supposed to be on here. This was supposed to be a 10, 15-minute video. And I just actually gave you a full breakdown of Spence and Bud Crawford. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I try to be as fair as possible. I have no choice but to be fair because it's a great fight. All right. So anyway, I'm out, man. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you smash the like button if you like the video. Share the video if you can as well. And I'm out of here. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.